I think I was around 13 when I first picked up my first drink. It became pretty clear for me from then that I drank differently to the other kids.
Hello and welcome to Wellbeing. I'm Jack Hodgins. Today I'll be discussing the experiences of having an alcohol use disorder. We are joined by Tori McCarthy, a senior therapist from South Pacific Private, an addiction treatment centre in New South Wales. Tori is someone who is 15 years sober of an alcohol use disorder, and we now have the privilege of gaining insight from her experiences. Hello Tori, and welcome to the program.
Hi, Jack.
Before we begin, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Tori?
I live in Sydney's Northern Beaches. I'm currently a senior therapist and the program manager at South Pacific Private. I'm a mother of 2 children. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
When did you first start to notice that alcohol was becoming a problem for you?
I think probably from the first time I picked up, it was pretty obvious that alcohol was a problem for me. Like most kids, I think I was around 13 when I first picked up my first drink. And it became pretty clear for me from then that I drank differently to the other kids. I wanted to drink more the way that I drank. I was very much a binge drinker, but just the behaviours associated with my drinking at that point was really clear to me that it was more unmanageable than the normal teenage kid.
Do you think the way that Australian culture views alcohol is a healthy view?
Oh, it's a massive issue in Australia. I think the drinking culture is it's so much in our culture from such a young age, and the children these days, the stories that I hear of kids drinking at earlier ages than 13 and getting into much far worse things, even in primary school, it's quite scary.
Did the culture in any way influence you to pick up that first drink?
Oh, look, I think back when I first started, not so much the culture. For me, it was a way to escape. It was to give me relief from probably having low self-esteem and feeling like I didn't belong. It was a really good crutch to be able to connect with people. And then as it developed, into my adult life, I guess that became even stronger. I didn't learn those social skills when I was a kid. And so how many people I see these days socialize and connect with people is through alcohol. And it just developed from there. I feel like I noticed it more that it was a problem as I got older and I started seeing, people my age were progressing in life and getting careers and getting married or having children, and all I wanted to do was go to the pub. It was everything revolved around alcohol pretty much, and if it didn't have alcohol involved, then I probably wasn't interested in going. Or if you weren't a big drinker, then I wouldn't be friends with you.
So it sounds like in a lot of ways, Tori, that an alcohol use disorder can really stop the progressing of someone's life.
Oh, hugely. I see that a lot. For me, definitely, it stopped my progression in life. It wasn't until I got sober that things started to really change for me, and my, recovery has given me an opportunity to do the things that I didn't get to do, that normal people did. I didn't travel. I didn't. I hadn't left Australia until I was in recovery. I barely left Sydney. It made my world very, very small.
Did you find that the addiction progressed gradually?
In terms of addiction and alcoholism, there's definitely a progression of the illness. So for me, I saw that, the progression was I was doing it more often. Obviously, when you're younger, you can't drink. You can, but I didn't drink every day. But as I got older and, I was 18 and I started going to pubs and clubs, and it was, that was the social thing that you did. And I did that. And then being able to go to the bottle shop, I'd drink alone. That's part of the progression that I saw, is that often when I wasn't socializing, it didn't stop there, that I'd be in my room. I'd be in my room drinking by myself, and I'd drink more often. In terms of, blackouts became more of a thing. doing things that went against my value system, behaving in ways that were embarrassing, that thing of, I think a lot of people have experienced, of waking up and going, what the hell did I do last night? But I think for an alcoholic that, that happens quite often. And then I guess getting to the point where you become so entrenched in it that you actually don't care anymore. And I think that's where it took me to the point of, well, I'm an alcoholic and this is my life and I don't really care what people think. For me, that was the progression of just becoming so low and so swallowed up by it. Like I'd really surrendered to the idea that this was my life. Couldn't see that there was a life outside of that. That wasn't on my radar.
What goes through the mind of someone as their addiction progresses? Were you actively aware in your heart of what was happening, but just couldn't admit it to yourself?
I mean, for a lot of people, I think that's true, is that they don't admit it to themselves, and that they're in denial. I don't think for me personally, that wasn't my experience, is that I knew that I was an alcoholic. I kind of just didn't think that there was anything else for me. I come from a family with alcoholism is in my family. And I think I'd surrounded myself also with a lot of people that have the disease of alcoholism. It was kind of just, I just accepted it.
How can an alcohol use disorder affect relationships with others?
Oh, massively. I see that more now that I'm in recovery. But, back before I got sober, my relationships were just a disaster. I, limited female friendships was a big one for me. I didn't really have any female friends until I got into recovery. I'd kind of burnt a lot of bridges with my behavior, and I didn't know how to have intimate relationships. And when I say intimate, I mean, not sexual. I mean intimacy.
Yep.
And I just didn't know how to do that. The relationships that I had with men were highly dysfunctional. Often I'd choose men that were, again, had some kind of issue, whether that be, again, alcoholism, addiction, and you can just imagine the chaos that goes on with that. Family is a massive thing. It really isolated me from people that loved me and cared for me, and pushed them away. And I see that happening, not just with myself, but I see that's the experience of other people, is that they, push people away. And when people try and love them and support them, they push them away even further.
You're listening to Wellbeing, where we're discussing the experiences of having an alcohol use disorder. My guest today is Tori McCarthy, Senior Therapist and Program Manager from Addiction Treatment Clinic South Pacific Private, and someone who is 15 years sober of an alcohol use disorder. Since you've undertaken the initial recovery, has relationships become a lot easier for you to approach?
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm recovered, but I'm in recovery. That's the kind of thing that we try and think about in recovery, because, I believe that I have the disease of alcoholism and that it will never go away. If I pick up that first drink or drug, that I will go back to it. So it's a daily practice for me to stay well, in terms of how my relationships have changed. I mean, it was really hard at the beginning. I remember, I got clean and sober through a rehab. So I got to a rock bottom that I needed to go somewhere, and that wasn't to get sober. It was to get well enough so I could keep drinking functionally. So I went into that rehab and found that there was other people like me that were trying to get well, and something happened in that place. And I haven't had a drink since that rehab, and that was nearly 15 years ago. 15 years in December. So that for me is a miracle. And in terms of relationships, I think it was actually excruciating at the beginning for me because I never learned how to be in relationship. The alcohol was what gave me the confidence to be able to speak to people. So when you took that away, it was like, who the hell am I? I just felt that I felt like that little girl again that didn't have a voice, and it felt like they were not good enough, and it was actually really horrible. but but you know, with time, what happened is that got easier, and it was, you know, it was a blessing that, you know, I chose to surround myself with other people that were in recovery, that fumbled their way through that process themselves, and I practiced and I learned how to have relationships with people without drinking, and I learned how to have relationships with women. I learned how to be honest and do all the things that I thought that I didn't want to do, but that I actually was dying for, but just didn't feel like I had the capacity to actually do it.
When someone begins undertaking the initial recovery, what kind of people should they surround themselves with?
Good question. I guess it depends on what route you want to go down in terms of how you get sober. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can find sobriety, but generally, I would say try and find people that are in a recovery community, you know, to get that that support from people that understand. For me, you know, I was lucky enough to go into a rehab and to continue that process with a recovery community, and also my family. You know, my family were huge supports for me, and they actually chose to stop drinking, which was very, very helpful for me. I know that's not everybody's reality, and that's definitely not going to happen for a lot of people. But for me, that was a blessing. And just have people, I guess, in your life, for me, that understood. You know, I had to be upfront with my boundaries around that I didn't drink. I know a lot of people that stop drinking find that challenging, and that have big lives, and it's really hard to actually to admit that they have a problem with drinking. For me, it was really important to go into life knowing that I guess I have enough people around me that are supportive and that aren't going to kind of put alcohol in my face and push back on that, you know. So there was a period of time that I really had to protect myself. There was a period of time that I didn't go to pubs and clubs, and I didn't go to events that had alcohol in them, because that was a big trigger for me, you know. And since then that's changed, and I can be around alcohol without wanting to have a drink. But I really needed that time to build a foundation and build an inner strength to know that, you know, there's something more important for me than alcohol.
Why do you think it's hard to ask for help?
Why is it hard to ask for help? So many reasons. And I think there's, you know, it's different for different people. At my core, I find it hard to ask for help. You know, that's something that I've had to really learn in recovery, to be vulnerable enough to ask for help. I know for some people, they have grown up feeling like it doesn't matter if I ask for help, nobody's there to help me anyway, or just feeling completely powerless, like what's the point? So overwhelmed in the grip of their addiction that it doesn't seem possible that anybody could help. And also, and a massive one is shame. You know, like there's such a big stigma in having any addiction that people don't want to ask for help because they don't want to admit that they have a problem, and feel that shame that, and a lot of people do shame people with addiction, you know, and that's partly why I believe so strongly about being open with my own recovery to reduce that stigma of shame, because there's so many people in the community that have drinking problems that you don't know about, you know, and I see that with the work that I do at South Pacific. It's just catches everybody.
What was the process, step by step, for you with rehab?
What was the process in the rehab I went to?
Yeah.
Well, that would be a bit too long to describe. But I mean, the process for me, I guess what I will share briefly is the fear of going was the biggest process, right? Is that getting to the point of being at a place where I was so desperate to reach out for help, and walking through the doors, and being really scared, but really wanting change. And then the process of being welcomed, and seeing people that were suffering from the same illness as me and feeling instantly connected. I went to a similar rehab as the one that I work in, and that's primarily group work. So being in a group full of people that you feel get you, and it was just such an amazing healing experience for me.
What doesn't society get about addiction?
I think what comes to my head instantly is that society believes that addiction is a choice. Why don't you just stop? And that, and I mean, even for the addict, often they think that, why can't I just stop? And they blame themselves for it. And I see that all the time when people do their step one processes in group, and they're in so much shame around their behavior. And it's like, if you had a choice to stop drinking, to stop using drugs, would you not do it? I mean, when you see the carnage that it takes, I mean, people lose their children, they go to prison, they lose their jobs, their marriages, their health. People die from the disease of addiction and alcoholism, and yet we still can't stop. It's so powerful. I think there's a huge lacking of awareness of just how much the person that's suffering is powerless over their addiction. And yes, we did choose to pick up that first drink or drug, but you don't choose to be addicted. Like that's something that happens. And for a lot of people, it runs in the family. It's something that's in your brain. It's hereditary. And for a lot of others, it's trauma. It's a way of trauma or mental health. It's a way to medicate yourself from your feelings of unmanageability, of pain, of fear, and it's the same part of the brain that tells you that you need water and food. It'd be like telling somebody, don't drink water when you're thirsty.
Yep.
Like, and that's how I like to describe it to people, because that's how it feels when you're in your craving and you're wanting to have a drink. You might be like so determined, and most alcoholics are, right? They go, this is going to be my last one. And you wake up the next day and you're like, oh my God, I really want to drink. No, I'm not. But your brain is like telling you have to have a drink. And everything in your body is telling you have to. And so to fight that, and to fight that alone, is a really big ask. And, that's why for most people, I really suggest if you haven't been able to stop by yourself, go into a treatment center, because it just gives you that opportunity to be around other people, to be supported, to be away from the substance, whatever your substance of choice is, and gives you that space to get over that initial craving and withdrawal.
You're listening to Wellbeing, where we're discussing the experiences of having an alcohol use disorder. My guest today is Tori McCarthy, Senior Therapist and Program Manager from Addiction Treatment Clinic South Pacific Private, and someone who is 15 years sober of an alcohol use disorder. Did you ever experience withdrawal symptoms while in rehab?
Yes, definitely. And it was horrendous. Yes, withdrawal isn't pretty. And that's, I guess, why people don't want to stop, right? And that's the other reason why they don't, because withdrawing from any substance, different substances have different withdrawal symptoms, but it's the mental obsession often that's the hardest thing to withdraw from. Physical, you can do it, but it's the mental stuff that it takes longer. So yes, I have withdrawn physically, mentally, spiritually from substance. And I don't want to do that again. So, so that's why, a day at a time since I've left that treatment center, I've done the things that I've needed to do to stay sober and to stay well, not just stay sober, but actually try and live a happy life. And I think that's what a lot of people don't do, is that they try and just stay sober, but they don't continue doing the things that they need to do to have that, spiritual and emotional sobriety.
Why should someone get sober?
There's a line that I love that's my favorite, and it's, you can have addiction or you can have everything else. That's why, and the everything else can be anything for for different people, but life is just amazing and painful at the same time, right? So the everything else isn't rainbows and lollipops.
No, no.
It's feelings, it's pain, it's fear, but it's also joy and love and relationships and dreams and, just living. It's being able to be present for the people that are in your life. It's being able to follow your dreams and be okay with who you are. I mean, that's what it is for me. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be where I am today 15 years ago. I remember first getting sober and thinking, oh, there's no way I don't want to do university. I can't do that. And, since doing that, I've been able to obviously do a few different degrees, go on to have children, have healthy relationships, do some beautiful spiritual work, and I have my dream job. So yeah, it's recovery it's a journey. It's a roller coaster at times, but so is life. But today I get to show up and today I have choices. And when I'm in my addiction, I don't have choices. I don't have those basic choices. And today I can choose everything.
How can someone avoid going down the spiral of addiction?
Don't pick up that first one. For some people, it's sadly unavoidable. And I guess it's, if that makes sense, because it's just, people do drink, people do use drugs. And for some people that we just can't stop. I guess it's for people out there that may be thinking about how they can support someone that they're concerned that's spiraling out of control. It's, catch it, observe, care, and don't be afraid to ask the question. I think a lot of people are afraid to actually, they might see their friends or family and notice that they're out of control or that they're getting that way, but they don't want to say anything. I think we need to talk more about it. And I guess that's that breaking the stigma, because if we break the stigma, then we can talk about it. And when that person has a supportive person that will say, hey, are you okay? And they might actually feel okay to go, hey, no, I'm not. And get help earlier before it gets too far out of control.
Do you miss alcohol?
Yes. The correct response should be no, but yeah, I do. I totally do. Living in Australia is hard. With alcohol, it is everywhere, and so yeah, sometimes I do miss alcohol, but I don't miss it enough to ruin my life. And I know that it would. I know that I'm one of those people that have crossed the line and there is no return. I'm very grateful that I know that, because if I did have that first one, I would lose everything. I wouldn't have the dream job. I wouldn't have the relationships that I do. I wouldn't have the internal and spiritual peace that I have most of the time.
Now that you're sober and you don't drink, when you're out and about and you see people drinking or there's drinks available, what are your strategies to remain not drinking?
If I'm feeling vulnerable and I go to an event, we have this thing in recovery that we talk about the HALTs: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or stressed, and that you've got to look after those things. So I'd never go to an event if I was hungry or thirsty, because then my brain's going to be saying, you need something. And if I see alcohol, it might go, that's what I want. That's how it kind of works. So that's a little tool that I like to share with clients when they're doing their aftercare plans, to really, really look at that stuff, like just basic needs, because we can get them confused when we have addictions. Other tools would be avoid. You can't avoid Australia, right? Just make sure that you're around supportive people who get it and have enough stuff in your life that you're getting pleasure from.
Did you feel like the legislation at the time or any regulations that were in place stopped you from from your alcohol use disorder progressing at all?
Regulations in terms of, do you mean like selling alcohol to underage children and stuff like that?
Yeah, anything like that. Anything like that.
Probably television, like commercials. It's just, I mean, you look at the advertising for liquor and it's so marketed towards young people, right? Like all these, it's like soft drinky kind of drinks that are all tasty and don't really taste like alcohol. I think that's a big thing. Unfortunately, the price issue, people are always going to buy alcohol no matter how much it costs. Same with cigarettes. Yeah, it may help with the quantity that they're drinking, but I think it's more of a cultural shift that's really needed. And I don't know if that's going to happen, which makes me feel sad, you know. It does make me feel sad. I think within the home, I see a lot and I hear a lot of parents that buy their children alcohol that are under 18 because they feel like it's safer if they do it. It's just so much in the family system as much as it is in the community. And then obviously children see that their parents and that everybody else drinks. It's like, it's very much around role modeling. You know, how do we role model to our youth what moderation looks like? And I don't think that our society does moderation in any area very well.
What would be the take home from this interview you want people to remember the most?
You know, if you're listening and you have a problem with alcohol, just reach out for help. Either speak to somebody that you can trust, or reach out to a service and just take that first really courageous step to do something different, because recovery is possible. And although it's scary, it's actually a really beautiful journey.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today, Tori. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. It's an absolute privilege to be able to share.
My guest today was Tori McCarthy, Senior Therapist and Program Manager from Addiction Treatment Clinic, South Pacific Private, and someone who is 15 years sober of an alcohol use disorder. Thank you for listening. I'm Jack Hodgins, and all of us at Wellbeing wish you well.